Hi, everybody. We will start in just a couple minutes here. We're just letting everybody in. Welcome, everybody. Just logging in. We're going to give it just 2 minutes, and then I will welcome everybody and get going here. Thanks for joining us during lunch. I always feel like we should have like waiting room music or something playing while we wait for it to start. Speaking of Danielle, I know you can't unmute yourself yet, Danielle, but hi. We were just talking about you. Mark was telling us about your presentation this morning.
Is the camera on? Yes. No, we're not. Yes.
Yeah, you are. I let you talk. You should be able to unmute yourself. There you
I'm
are.
surprised she's awake.
Yes.
Hey, Danielle.
Short
might
interval. That was 1 to 3 a.m. Sneezed a snoozing in between.
Oh my goodness. Well, we're going to ask you to come speak here for us at a future meeting. So, all right, it's 12:02, so I am going to start us off and say thank you everybody for coming. People are still coming in, but I want to be wary of time. We have a lot of presentations today, so we want to get through it. Just quick shout out to our leadership team. And this is my last meeting as chair of the committee. I've been the chair for the last 2 years, and I'll be handing the reins off to Gina at the end of this meeting, and we'll be in great hands. So it's been a really great ride, and I look forward to working with everyone. And we've added a bunch of new faces to our committee as well. So welcome to Jen, Mike, Megan, and Betsy. And we're going to have a great 2025. So packed agenda today. We're going to hear from Elizabeth Toops and Tiffany Baca about workforce development, and then an update from Brenly McKenna, WateReuse, California. And then Lakeisha Bryant from Valley Water is going to talk about DPR meeting King Bach, and I'm not going to go into any more of that because it's going to be cool. And then Jen will do a little media update, and then Betsy's going to host roundtables. So without further ado, excuse me, I would like to welcome Elizabeth and Tiffany, and I'm going to stop sharing, and Tiffany, you can share and start off and tell us a little bit about yourselves and then go on. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you to this group for inviting us to come speak to you about awareness and action, communicating the future of our water workforce. We do find, let me see. Let me try this one more time. I lost myself. We do find that a lot of different people forget that we're in this together. Forget that we need everybody at the table to tackle the challenges that we have with workforce, and communications is no different. My name is Tiffany Baca, and I am the executive director of the Water Energy Education Alliance, and also the public affairs manager of the Municipal Water District of Orange County. I'm really fortunate to have been able to be in both spaces, and up until very recently, like heavily invested in both spaces. We are looking at making a larger transition over to some of the workforce stuff because it's just absolutely exploded. It's really important. I have my contact information here. If you have any questions about my portion of the presentation or like to connect with me on LinkedIn, I invite you to do so. And I'm joined today by Elizabeth Toops, and this was by request of the committee. Elizabeth is the manager of Bay Work and also the senior manager of employer impact at JBS. So she has been deeply immersed in workforce development for quite some time in the Bay Area, which has been extremely successful, and now also in the Inland Empire. And her contact information is also here. I'm going to start by setting the stage so that we're all kind of on the same page, right? What are the challenges that we're actually faced with? And, I'm going to touch lightly on some of them because we could be here for years trying to discuss all of the challenges. When you dig deeper into workforce, you solve one problem, you realize there are 10 others. And part of that, I think, is because we really haven't had to recruit in decades. We stay in our jobs for the past 50 years. Most people stay and then they retire and they go on to be board members. So really communicating the value of what we do is new to us, and learning new ways to recruit different generations. And we'll talk a little bit about that further along in the presentation. It's also, old dogs learning new tricks. So I'm going to set the stage. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about what WIA is and what WIA does. And I'm going to hand it over to Elizabeth, who's then going to talk about what Bay Work is and what all the great programs and initiatives that Bay Work has. And then we're going to close with some action items because I think, it's difficult to join a presentation and then be excited about or interested in what happens during the presentation and not have those action items. So that's kind of how we're going to work this presentation. Most of the slides, you're going to see real people in actual jobs, and you're going to see a lot more of that in the months and the years ahead, because we really need to start putting faces with the people that do this work. And we encourage you to do the same in your organizations. I'd love to see some familiar faces and some familiar names on this call. We're actually wrapping up a video project with Jen Swart and WRD that emphasizes the water workers that are on the front lines and that really make a difference in this industry so that we can inspire the next generation. So let me go ahead and set the stage. Some of the issues, the central issues that we know we have, aging workforce, and I don't think anyone's surprised about this. I don't know about you all, but I've been hearing about the silver tsunami for 16 years. That's how long I've been employed in the water industry. And when we first assumed leadership of WIA, that was my primary concern. We have this silver tsunami, sound the horns. How are we going to fix this problem? We've been warned for quite some time, and now it's getting very critical. So 2024 marks peak 65, which means that this is the first time ever that we have about 12 million Americans reaching retirement age every single day. So we're not also the only ones who are going to be affected by this, but I think what we also need to remember about this is that we're now competing in a much larger pool. There are a lot of people who have jobs that are attracting the younger generations, whether it be emerging technology or something else, even if it's communications, and we're competing to be viable in that space with a huge retirement gap looming. So something that we need to pay attention to, because if we don't address this now, we're looking at a shortage of experienced workers, which can have a whole slew of effects, as you can imagine. Some of these statistics that you'll see on this particular slide, you can find a lot of workforce statistics, and you can dig into some other reports that'll give you some other statistics. But last year we launched, and when I say we, the Water Energy Education Alliance initiated a statewide workforce needs report. And we did that simply because when I was sounding the bell about the aging workforce and the retirement numbers, and I would ask people, what are your retirement numbers like? I tried to do my own polls, I tried to do my own surveys, and that was a bust. We really needed some quantifiable data to tell us what we were actually looking at. So we initiated the statewide needs report with the Centers of Excellence for Labor Market Research, And the COE is responsible. They're the primary data provider to community colleges, which when we're looking at the 8 mission critical occupations, which were identified by an advisory, Elizabeth was part of that advisory in electrical maintenance and operational, we really had to take a look across the state and make sure that what we were reporting and the information we were gathering was something that each of us were facing in our region, right? We heard earlier in the program that every region is a little bit different. Some regions pay a little bit more. The cost of living is higher or lower. Some areas are more diverse than others. And so we wanted to make sure that we kind of had a baseline. So this report took 15 months to complete. We had an advisory with Metropolitan Water District, Municipal Water District, obviously the WIA group, Bay Work, IE Works, and the San Diego region to help us inform the study. I sent out an initial, the COE sent out an initial request for water industry professionals to fill out the survey. We've got about 245 responses, which isn't too bad. This is where your partnership skills come in. I reached out to the State Water Resources Control Board, who actually participates in our meetings and some of our discussions. And I said, hey, is there any way that you could help us send this out on this is information that we all need. And they actually did it. And we ended up with 545 responses across the state. So we feel we have a really good sample to inform this study. We also met with 20 community colleges and interviewed them to get their perspective, and then included labor market data in the study. So if you haven't read it, I encourage you to do so. It really does say a lot. So the aging workforce is a problem, lack of awareness and interest in our jobs, that's not new. I love to ask groups that I'm a part of, and I can't see everybody here, but anytime I go to a conference or I have an opportunity to say, hey, how many of you in the water world knew that that was the career you were going to get into when you got out of school, or where you were still in school and you were considering your career going to college? Anybody here, by show of hands, knew they were getting into water? I'm going to just see if anybody wants to raise their hand and that I can see who I can see. Anybody knew that? I can tell you that nobody really plans this. If you raise your hand, and I haven't had a single person raise their hand yet, you are a unicorn. And we want to know what it was that we did to make you consider water early on. So the lack of awareness and interest is something we need to work on. Again, we're having that recruitment and hiring challenges. About 77% of organizations that were asked, are you having problems recruiting? And yes, we are. Public perception needs to change, and that's a big role of communication. So, excited to be here today to talk a little bit about that. We know that there are skilled labor gaps. Technology is moving so quickly. It's very difficult for us to keep up with the technology, the changing skills, and we need to start working with our training partners to ensure that we're training for the next generation as well. Who are we bringing into the fold, and what does the future look like? And we need to start paying attention to that, because it's going to be a serious problem, probably sooner than we anticipate. I love, introducing soft skills. This is a huge, huge problem. I say soft skills. I don't want anybody to kill me or send me nasty letters. I know that that is not a term that we use today, but it's always a good starting point because it's foundational. Everybody understands. That means communication, collaboration, partnerships, teamwork, but we don't say that anymore. So for communicators who are still saying soft skills, please maybe use essential skills, people skills, human skills, professional, interpersonal, and/or power skills. You'll have more friends if you do that. But when we have those skilled labor gaps, we also have this greater risk of inefficiencies. And in our business, we just can't have that. I've noticed as a hiring manager, when we do hire employees, looking at some of the gaps in skills, it really puts us backwards instead of forwards. And what we don't need to do is keep going backwards to correct or to train or to we need to start moving forwards. And part of that solution is to again, work with those training partners and identify our needs so that we can train the employees that are filling those jobs and we don't have to do so much work once they're employed. And then, of course, we have diversity gaps. Nobody's surprised by this. Our study showed that in these 8 mission critical occupations, 94% of these mission critical workers are male. It's really not a surprise, but it's kind of a surprise, right? When that 94% number pops out at you, you think, oh, gee, how are we recruiting women to this industry? So thinking about that, to that point, currently enrolled in training programs for these 8 mission critical occupations, 86% are also male. So keeping that in mind, these are some of the challenges. Again, when we're looking at diversity, if the workers or if our employees do not reflect the community served, there is a whole plethora of challenges that creates, including a lack of trust. The messages don't fall on the needs of our communities. So the diversity gaps is something that we absolutely have to pay attention to. We're all caught up, sort of. There's a lot more to this, but these are the overarching challenges. So now I'm going to hand it over to Elizabeth, and she's going to tell you a little bit about Baywork and how the work that they're doing is making significant leaps and changes in this space.
Thanks, Tiffany. Do you want to share the PowerPoint again?
Oh, am I not sharing it?
At some point, it went away.
I can see it still.
Let me try one more time. I'm going to try it one more time. How's that?
Now, yeah, there you go.
Okay.
There you go. Yeah, great. For some reason, I kind of lost it. Well, good afternoon, I guess, everybody. My name is Elizabeth Toops. As we talked about earlier, and I think it's I think it's really important to note that both Tiffany and I have multiple roles, and I think that that's a real sort of good reminder of the partnerships that it takes to make this work successful. And certainly the work that WIA has done and the study that WIA led along with our community college partners and our industry partners is critical in getting to the core of the workforce dynamic in our industry. Baywork is a consortium of 43 water and wastewater agencies in the Bay Area. We cover, we represent pretty much all 9 of the primary counties of the San Francisco Bay Area. And our focus is on workforce reliability. And our core value is really that we as an industry can't achieve operational reliability without workforce reliability, and that work is really sort of centered in 2 key functions. Number one, the training for current staff and leaders. And the second part of that is really about bringing in new workers to the workforce. So in terms of training the current staff and leaders, we're really focused again on what are the things that are challenging their ability to maintain operational resilience. And embedded in everything that we do is really this notion of lifelong learning. What are the skills that not only does the workforce need now, but in the future? So, for instance, one of the projects that Baywork is working on right now is a water industry summit that's going to happen later in February. And we're really digging into 2 significant threats to the industry, climate change and cybersecurity. And where does that, where are the training needs across all parts of the organization? And in terms of the outreach to new workers, that really looks like awareness. You'll hear Tiffany and I both talk about awareness quite a bit, which is certainly relevant to this particular group. How do we increase awareness about our industry by engaging college students, high school students, and also teachers. We've done Baywork has done some great work with middle school and high school teachers around what we call teacher externships, and the theory there is that if we have the ability to impact the curriculum that's being taught in our K-12 schools, especially those STEM classes that we know are so important for young people being successful in careers like in water, and then we will have reached far more young people than we could through, let's say, a high school career fair where we might have a few dozen people come to the table, or a college fair. So those are some of the examples of the ways that we've really strived to increase awareness. And then in terms of actually building a new workforce, Baywork has been heavily involved in the development of internship and apprenticeship training programs. And that really starts, to be quite honest, with our local water and wastewater utility agencies building out those positions in their budget. These are positions that agencies are committing to as a sort of a grow your own kind of approach to their workforce. At the end of the day, Baywork and WIA and our Inland Empire sister consortium, IE Works, are all about a network. We're a network of water professionals, and we realize that this is not work we can do alone. We, as individual agencies, need to come together and solve these problems together. Whether it's signatory agencies, JVS is one of our nonprofit partners who's been so instrumental in drawing down both state and federal funds for a lot of this work, as well as our other as well as our college partners, of course. Next slide. Success stories. So I put two links in the chat. One is to the Baywork website, where you can just get more information about Baywork, and the second one is the Bayworks 2022 to 2024 report. And I'd strongly encourage you to take a look at that, in part because it really highlights some of the successes that workers have had in getting into the industry. Certainly our instrumentation and controls technician apprenticeship has been a strong collaboration. JVS as the raising funds for the development of the apprenticeship. Baywork and Baywork agencies in terms of the design of the apprenticeship. And Valley Water in particular, posting and hiring 2 new instrumentation and controls technicians apprentices. So you'll see those 2 interns, Gabriel and Dulce, highlighted in this report. And you'll also see a video in this report that highlights 2 machinists from East Bay Municipal Utility District, East Bay Mud, and how they got to Baywork, the road, the sort of the circuitous route that they took to get into the industry. It really speaks to what we talked about earlier in terms of not enough people aspire to go directly into the industry. So you'll see some great stories, and I certainly think that is part of our one of our goals really should be to leverage stories like this as much as possible, both from an awareness perspective, but also just celebrating the success of individual workers in our industry, and doing and helping to better connect the work that these individual agencies and this life-affirming work that our individual agencies are doing for their local residents, and why our industry is so important, and why ultimately continued support for those industries locally is so important. Okay. And I think I will kick it back to you, Tiffany. Unless there are any, do we want to wait till the end for questions?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and I do need to say that when you take a look at the amazing work that Baywork and Elizabeth and her teams do, try not to get intimidated. I can tell you when I first started in workforce development, like my idea was that I had to be Baywork. And I thought, how in the world am I going to do that? They do so much and there's so much expertise. Whatever you do to make moves forward in workforce development, you can do it at your own pace and you can do it to meet the needs of your region. As long as you're doing it, we're in this together, and you will always have support, but you'll see the stuff Baywork does and they do incredible work. Don't get intimidated, keep moving forward. Reach out to Elizabeth if you have questions about what they do and how they do it, because they do an incredible job. So on to the Water Energy Education Alliance. We are a California workforce collaborative. We started we actually started in 2018, and it was started and founded by a very enthusiastic science teacher who I'm still friends with today. And he had this grand idea to help kids get into these high-paying, high-quality jobs that could potentially be life-changing. And we have seen that. I know that being in the water industry has changed my life in significant ways, and I'm sure many of you can say the same. 2020, 2020, AB5 hit, and the California Environmental Education Foundation, who is one of our supporters, could no longer process this program, complete this program the way that they needed to, because the way that we looked at contractors changed. And so they needed to pass it to somebody. K-12 education, environmental literacy are all things that are very near and dear to my heart. And that's the trajectory I've kind of always been on. And I thought, well, this makes sense because now we're looking at introducing young students to the next step, which is jobs. So let me ask my board, and it did take quite some time for them to agree that this was something that we needed to take on, especially during the pandemic, right? I'm saying 2020 because I look back and I think you're a mad person for trying to take on something like this during the pandemic, not having any background in workforce development. Fast forward to today, we started with 20 organizations in Southern California, and I'm very pleased to say that we are now at 250 plus organizations statewide, not people, but organizations. And we do something very different than what Baywork and Elizabeth do. When I say 250 organizations, I don't mean 250 organizations have signed on and are sponsoring money, that sort of thing. I mean that 250 plus organizations statewide are actively participating in our discussions, in our panels, in our polls, in our discovery items. And to me, that is significant because we were only engaging 20 at the very beginning. So we've grown a lot because people care about this. WIA is a bridge between employers, educators, and workforce. And something that we've been talking about is moving some of my responsibilities a little bit more towards the workforce development side because it's gotten so big. And if you want to do significant things, you need a tribe. And I have my tribe, but I can only ask so much. So what we do, and what we found this really beautiful this really beautiful bridge where we are connectors. So we have employers on one side, which are the water and wastewater providers, energy providers, and contractors. And we have the educators and workforce advocates kind of on the other side, non-formal and formal education, the K-12 system, community colleges, universities, trade schools, ROPs, and more. We both want the same thing. We both have a different idea sometimes how to get there, but and we also speak very different languages, but we're learning how to speak to each other so we can move forward to reach the same end goal. And that is, how do we get qualified, skilled, trained people in these jobs? And we both want the same thing. So it's been a beautiful partnership. We use this collaborative to share resources, to engage in partnerships where people didn't realize there were partnerships before. But when we're having these conversations and we're introducing partners to each other, or for example, the advisory and the workforce report that I did with Elizabeth and others, we need to do this together. And this is a wonderful bridge. We're sharing strategies. And if someone says, I've got a CTE program, I'm not sure if I'm doing it properly. Is anyone out there that can help me? We have somebody who can help read through it and who wants to help read through it. And then we have other people who say, we want a CTE program, but we just don't know how to get there. So it's just wonderful to not have to start at the beginning. And it's nice to have that support to help you continue on the journey that you're on. I have here current employees training and development under employers, because we're not just looking at those entry-level positions, we're also looking long into the future. And you can see that the conversations are starting to change from just that recruitment piece to how are we training the next generation to take the spots that are being left behind or will be left behind. It's allowing us to think more deeply about the benefits of mentorship, because we've been living in this pandemic and then post-pandemic world where everything is so chaotic. We're at a point where we need to take a few steps back and see where we're going to make an impact with our internal teams. And then on the educators and advocates side, you see that we have the future workforce. We've done some wonderful things simply by opening the door and allowing students the opportunity and teachers the opportunity, like Elizabeth said, to make an impact and to make a long-term impact. When I do, and Elizabeth does teacher trainings, we sponsor teacher trainings. When we train one teacher, or we have one teacher become an advocate for industry jobs, let's say that teacher has 30 students in one class, 5 classes in a year. That's 150 students that we have an opportunity to reach. And then you multiply that by a teacher's career term, right? And then all the other teachers that they engage in that. Teachers really are a key, and we encourage you to reach out to your educators because they want us there. From that workforce report that I talked about earlier, and I actually was at a meeting earlier this week where they're using the same structure with very limited resources, but a huge network. We needed to get very clear about where our development was going and how we were going to focus in these areas. And so we took the recommendations from the workforce report again, and nobody was surprised by the data that we received, but it helps us go forward in a very thoughtful way and in a very intentional way. So we came up with a brand new acronym. So if you love acronyms, which most people in water and education do, here's a new one for you, and feel free to use it. It's DAPS, diversity, identifying and bridging diversity and equity gaps, which we talked a little bit at the beginning, fostering that inclusive workforce, the workforce environment, and then the strategies that we're taking moving forward. Awareness, increasing awareness to attract more students and job candidates, using our partners, so partnership to do that and to develop and improve the quality programming that we have now, the networks that we have now that grow and become something even bigger. And then identifying those required skills that help students and our current employees prepare for the next step, right? We have, again, this same meeting, I love to see this. The chancellor of this community college pulled several job descriptions and went through the requirements for students to apply for these jobs. She didn't name names, who it was that she pulled these job descriptions for, but she's like, all my students meet and exceed all of these requirements. The same job, nobody meets and exceeds these requirements. So it's really going to be important for us moving forward, eliminating some of those barriers to apply for our jobs and identifying those required skills that we need so that we're not wasting time inviting people in, going through the interview process that really either don't stand a chance or are going to cost us a lot more once we bring them on board. I did want to highlight this little statistic for you because I think this is really important. Again, because I'm passionate about that K-12 space, and I really believe that we need to start very early. There are studies that show that without that early career exploration piece, children tend to limit their future career aspirations to professions that align with their traditional gender roles. If we feel like we're having trouble recruiting women into the workforce, maybe we need to consider how early we're engaging women to consider these jobs. So I wanted to point that out because it's something that we do and we kind of do it without thinking, right? So now let's be a little bit more intentional and thoughtful about the way that we're approaching this. Currently, I have a live anonymous poll, and I love this poll. It's a multi-generational point of view, one question poll. It truly is one question, but there are two parts to it. First, you have to identify what generation you're a part of, right? Are you in the traditional group, baby boomer, Gen X, millennial, or Gen Z? And not everybody knows what those parameters are, so I included them on this slide. And of course, we'll share our slide deck when we're all done here. But we have these ideas, and some people may think it's noise. Some people may think that we need to change the way that we do everything to accommodate a younger generation. There are lots of opinions out there. So we've got the first, it's not question, the first part, which is your identifier. The second part, which is this question: what is the most significant barrier to effective collaboration? Then we have the part that says, why do you feel this way? Or do you have a reason for the belief why you selected A through F? So I'm trying this out. I tried it out at the Aqua conference on a couple of friends, and we're going to see, and I can't see everybody, but I'll give you a few minutes and you let me know, or just think about it. And I'm going to tell you who said what. So the first one is, out of these options, A through E, who do you think said older folks struggle to communicate in a respectful way to younger people? Do you think traditional, baby boomer, Gen X, millennial, Gen Z? I don't know if we have an option to share in the chat, or if not, but
Yeah, people can chat now. I fixed it.
okay. Well, I gave away the first answer because I was clicking around. A millennial actually said this. And if that was your first jump to a conclusion, good for you. The next one: I often try to assess and learn new technology on my own. Who do you think said it? We have one saying Gen X, Z. Any other guesses? X, boomer, millennial. You see how we're kind of all over the place? Gen X. And the answer is baby boomer. I often try to access and learn new technology on my own. And you can see that I found some really interesting things already through this survey, including, and this may or may not surprise you, that Gen X and the traditional generation are more aligned than any other. And if you think about, if you're a Gen Xer, think about the way that we were raised and the relationships we had with our grandparents. So that makes perfect sense, doesn't it? Or when we have an option here about tech and innovation. And nobody so far in any of the generations except for D and E even mentioned tech as being part of their barrier. But, right? I find it fascinating. So the next one, younger employees eager to make a mark may prioritize quick strategic changes and act with confidence, sometimes overlooking the value of mastering details first. Who said it? Oop, dang, I gave it away again. I apologize, you guys. Okay, but we did have somebody say X before I gave it away. I was too quick with my keyboard, which says I probably need to work on my tech and innovation. Thank you, Jen. Thanks for that laugh. Yeah, but if your initial response maybe wasn't Gen X, maybe it was Boomer, or maybe it was traditional. And if it was traditional, maybe it aligns very well with the way Gen X thinks. So we have nearly 100 responses so far. I encourage you, please, after this webinar, take the poll, share it with your friends and family so we have another really good sample. I think the most interesting thing that's going to happen is not the order or the ranking of where we find our challenges. It's who said what, and if we can guess who said what, and if we're right. Because people are very strongly opinionated about this. I get emails that are miles long because people want to weigh in and tell me why. I'll give you something interesting. Almost everybody has selected a number or a letter, right? One generation, and I won't give it away because it's not on the slide. One generation is the only generation who felt they had to elaborate, and they did it. Many of them did it. Can you guess who that might be? They felt they had to elaborate on their answers. Only one generation. Can you guess who that might be? Millennial, Boomer, Z, Millennial, Millennial, Gen X. we were the only ones who felt like we had to elaborate, like the answer wasn't good enough. We had to tell you why. So we're learning things through things like this anonymous poll, but I think it's also very telling when we build these campaigns or these messages for our audience groups. Are we truly reaching the core of who they are or who they think they are versus who we might think they are? Something to consider. Take the poll. I'm going to do another one of these Who Said It at our next Leadership Roundtable meeting, which you are all invited to. It's going to be very similar. I think I'm going to speak at Urban Water, and I may do something similar. We have enough of a sample where I'll pick different ones. So, but you can see kind of how everybody is across the board a little bit different. We'd like to, again, ask you to join us. You'll see the photo subject here, Brianne Padilla. I did mention that we're working on a video project with the Water Replenishment District. Jen, I just talked to Tim. I'm not sure if you've gotten the first draft, but the first draft should be coming to you soon. I think you're really going to be happy. It starts with Brianne. Our speaker for the next Leadership Roundtable meeting is Don Jones, Center for Water Studies. What's significant about Don is he has 60 years in the water industry and in education, and is a workforce advocate. And he really has a lot of information to share, tried and true techniques. He is a key implementer of the Center for Water Studies. He has implemented women in water programs, warriors to water programs, and he is retiring in 2025. And I made sure to tell him, we need your information. We need what's in your head before you walk away. Please give us your best. So this is going to be very interesting. I also wanted to kind of end this part of the presentation letting you know that WIA is funded by sponsors. The Municipal Water District of Orange County contributes like a third of what I do for WIA, but we also have some very significant sponsors, and I always try and give them a shout out because without these sponsorships, we wouldn't be able to move forward. So the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California, Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, Eastern Municipal Water District, Tomorrow's Talent, Water Replenishment District, Molten the Gal Water District, Western Municipal Water District. If you're on the call today, thank you again for your sponsorship. If you're interested in sponsoring WEA, there are opportunities to do that. Just reach out to me. And we hope you can join us at our next meeting. Now I'm going to kick it back over to Elizabeth, and we're going to talk about the final piece, and that is how you can get involved and why your role as communicators is key to what happens next.
So this is really the sort of the meat of the work, right? And I do think it's so important that we're sharing this information with folks who are focused on communications efforts. Certainly I think the presentation that hopefully the presentation that Tiffany and I've offered today has really highlighted the importance of strong partnerships, much like what Tiffany just talked about in terms of the partnerships that WEA has, both from the industry side and the funder side. Certainly we can say the same about the partnerships that that exist in the Bay Area as well, and building those quality relationships with the schools, which some of the work that we've highlighted today, vocational programs like apprenticeship programs, adult education programs, and community organizations like JVS and other nonprofit organizations that have for decades done, in essence, workforce planning and training work in other sectors, find the work that we're doing in the public sector to be so compelling. So it's important for us to continue to highlight that work, both at the local level and at the state, and certainly at the federal level as well. Identifying those local ambassadors who can really help us grow our network. We put links on the in the chat, or that are good examples of how we can leverage social media, water career days, a day without water, all of these opportunities that we have during the course of the year, to really highlight the importance of this industry, and the importance of having that operational reliability, imperative. Our work is also really about creating shared messaging, and there's been some really good work done over the last couple of years, led by some of the statewide organizations like CWEA. Certainly WEA has been doing great work as well. How do we have shared messaging, and really, like I said before, highlighting these water careers, and I would say that when the discussion around different sort of insights or preferences that the different generations have, one of the things that is really compelling for our work is increased interest and dedication by younger workers to and there's sensitivity to climate resilience, and understanding the implications when we're in drought periods. They're worried more than anybody about whether there's going to be reliable sources of good drinking water for their kids and grandkids, and so they're much more aware about not necessarily the industry, but about these sort of the issues around climate change, for instance, and the impacts that they're having. You know, it's always interesting when we table at either high school fairs or career fairs, or college career fairs. The first question I often ask is, so where do you think where does your water come from? Do you know the source of the water that you're drinking each and every day? Do you know what happens to the water after you take a shower? Does it just go straight out to your local, water source like the bay or the ocean, or is there something that happens to it before it gets released? And whether it's high school students or college students, they're not they're not aware of some of those basic concepts. Although I was recently at a high school career fair, and it happened to be um, uh, sort of it was in western San Mateo County, near Half Moon Bay, and several of the kids rightfully said, well, we get our water from the reservoir, meaning the Crystal Springs Reservoir, which is a very reliable source of high quality drinking water. And I said, well, okay, that's the reservoir, but where did it start from? It was a really good back and forth conversation about, have you ever heard of Yosemite? Do you know what's a feature of Yosemite in the wintertime? And so we got to talking about, that how important it is for people to know where our water is coming from, why it's important to conserve it and treat it as an invaluable resource. And for young people, in some respects, most importantly, what effort does it take to get it from the the mountains in the Sierra down to Crystal Springs Reservoir in the Bay Area? What are the different skill sets that it takes? And then my second question is, how are you doing in math? Because that's the next message that I really like to share with young people is it is no longer acceptable to say, oh, I'm just not good at math. I'm just not going to get it. Not going to focus on jobs that require math. And the message I send them is good luck with that, because most jobs that will enable families to thrive require at least decent math skills. So anyway, I don't want to, that's a bit of a soapbox for me, but anyway, I'll but I will just again leave you with the importance of sharing these employee stories. And it's certainly water agencies need a ton of engineers. That's way important, and it's important for those engineers to advocate for more women to go into engineering, especially electrical engineering and civil engineering, those jobs that our industry hires, because those engineers often become the assistant general managers and the general managers, the leaders of the industries, of the agencies. So what can we do to encourage young women to go into engineering and to choose public utilities as a career?
Right.
Any
I think we're ready
any
for
questions?
questions.
If people want to raise their hand, I can unmute you, or you can put it in the Q&A box as well. Thank you so much, Tiffany and Elizabeth. That was awesome.
Oh, good. For this group, before we'll get to questions, also want to let you know that we did develop and distribute water industry career brochures in 9 languages. So if you need something, and they're free, if your sponsor will put your logo on them, if you want to put your own logo on them, that's your responsibility. But they're on our website. I'll put it in the chat. Start promoting these jobs, start using them at career fairs, start letting people know that we exist. And in 9 languages, there probably isn't too many barriers there. So happy to take those questions.
Cool. Looks like Brenly has her hand up.
Hi, Tiffany and Elizabeth, thank you so much. That was so helpful to learn, and I loved the breakdown between the generations for that poll. I did take the poll, and I was actually going to offer, if it's helpful, we can also talk offline. We can share that poll in our monthly newsletter. If you wanted to help get the word out, we have pretty good readership. We actually have an excellent open rate. And I'd love to connect further with you both and see how we might better communicate and kind of leverage each other where we can, because I think this is so helpful across the water section, the sector. It's not necessarily specific to reuse, but it's so helpful for us to have in mind as we're building our future and getting our future water champions in the door. So I really appreciate it, and that was so helpful. So I'm going to send you both a follow-up note for us to connect.
Great, sounds good. Thank you.
Any other questions out there? Check the Q&A. Not seeing any. Fan from San Francisco did say she raised her hand, though, that she knew she was going into the water field, Tiffany. So we had one attendee knew they were going into water.
You are a unicorn. You're my first person to raise their hand and say, I knew it. And I've been to conferences, Aqua, WWA, and when asked the question, not a single hand. And we're talking across generations, so all the way through advanced leadership. So hold on to that and tell others.
Here's your chance. No other questions. We'll say thank you. Oh, Q&A, let's see. Oh, just a comment. Thank you for wonderful work you do. Have you associated the water industry with green jobs, and does that tend to drum up more interest? Great question.
Excellent question. I'll let Elizabeth speak from her perspective. I got into this because of my passion for the K-12 system and environmental literacy. And I think I mentioned that at the beginning. And I was on a Green Careers panel, a Green Careers workforce, where we're talking about how younger generations really care about this, but the water industry hasn't embraced it. We are a green career or a blue career, whatever floats your boat and whatever your service area likes to hear. But we absolutely need to consider that we're a green career. And one of the things that we've started doing, and I'm talking about the Municipal Water District of Orange County, in our K-12 program, is integrate the career exploration component to an already existing environmental literacy centric curriculum. So we're already having students investigate the world around them. And then we're saying, okay, now you've identified problems. What jobs will it require to find those solutions? And can you see yourself in those jobs? And Elizabeth has talked about it. I've talked about it. Those partnerships are key. When we find others who are doing the environmental literacy work and doing it well, we want to integrate our career component into that, because we really want to be considered a job of the future. But the water industry has to embrace it. Water industry has to embrace it.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. Like I mentioned earlier, there's certainly more awareness among younger generations. And with that said, in terms of one of the things I think in my observation, that our industry has to do a little bit more work on is be more supportive of young people moving into the industry. Too often we hear employers, saying, oh, won't even look at anybody who's not, 22, 24 years old. They have to have some life experience, or, they have to have, have already been successful in one job before they come into the industry. Certainly that's one approach. But we have some we're potentially missing out on some great talent for our industry. So that's one of the things that we're trying to do, is encourage more intern positions and giving young people a chance to shine.
Okay, thank you. Great answers. The next question is, are there additional resources, training, and mentoring, as you mentioned, for those moving into leadership roles in the water industry? Sometimes there's a gap, more entry-level people, but not enough support for them to move forward into more responsibility.
Yeah, this is a big challenge, right? Because we have this new generation or younger generations who kind of grew up in a pandemic and in a digital world and in social media, and now they're hungry for a mentor and they're hungry for that connection. And it's very hard if your organization doesn't have a mentorship program. Some do. So if you're one of those wonderful organizations who have decided that mentorship matters, because it does, great. For this group of communicators, I know that if you're a member of PRSA or you're a member of Capio, there are mentorship opportunities there, and the water industry presence has been growing for years. So I would recommend that you also look into our communications networks for that. But I'm sure Elizabeth has more to add.
Yeah, one of the things that Baywork has launched in the last year is a mentorship program. We call it our Cross-Agency Mentorship Program, or CAMP. And we had a lot of interest among mentees, students, and other people who were looking for a mentor. And we've had some difficulty sort of recruiting mentors to pair them with. So we're taking a little bit of a different approach. What I would suggest is that, I think that some of this is about sort of the an aging workforce, the silver tsunami, where people are, sort of feeling like they're at the tail end of their career and may not be too energized about taking on new new responsibilities, kind of a thing. So we're really focusing on, so for instance, our interns and our apprentices, ensuring that they have good mentors. And again, back to my story about tabling sessions. It's one of the things I ask young people, who would you say is your mentor? And they often say a parent or a teacher. And I stress to them how important it is for them to have somebody who's going to play that role for them throughout their professional career, no matter what they choose to do, and highlighting the reasons why that's important. So I think we have a lot more work to do in this area, and certainly something that Baywork is digging into. And if you go to the Baywork website, you'll see some resources on mentorship on our website, by the way.
Thank you. Any last question? Here's your chance. Fantastic presentation. I was taking notes and screenshots, even though I know we will send this presentation out to the list. I was also taking all your links in the chat so we can send those out as well in the follow-up email to everybody.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank
And
you.
thanks everyone for your time today. I hope it was beneficial. This is work that's going on, and we hope to be able to collaborate with you and keep this momentum.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, Brenly, I'm going to toss it over to you for California water reuse update.
And thank you. And sorry, you're viewing the same presentation twice in one day. I did change the order just a little bit. So okay. Can you all see my screen? I think we're good. Okay.
Yeah, it looks good.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So I'm here to just give you all an update about what we've been working on as an organization. I'll go through it relatively quickly, but feel free to ask questions at the end. This is something that many of you may have seen before. Our conference is growing, and this is something we're really proud of. So in 2024, we had 803 registered attendees at in Orange County, and this was record breaking for us. And we hope to see that trend continue. We're really excited, and the San Diego planning is well underway at this point. So we're anticipating a good turnout at that event as well. We hope to see many of your presentations highlighted there as well. And I wanted to give you a little bit of a sense of what we've been working on for the last quarter. We have been pretty busy with planning for 2025. So that includes getting our budget planned and approved by our board. We did that in November. We've been working on strategic planning, which I'll get into in my next slide, but we've made great progress there. And continuing to build community. This is something where we're hoping as staff to continue to come to events like this and meet with our members where they are. So you'll continue to see us showing up at chapter meetings throughout the state and other workshops as well. Workshop execution, this is something that we're really proud of and something that we started thinking about and planning for in this last summer. And this workshop was really dedicated to thinking through what we need to do to implement direct potable reuse. Given that the new regulations are now effective as of October 1st, what are the things that we need to be thinking about to make this possible for our members? We know we have a lot of work left to do in this area, and I'll also just mention it's not just direct potable reuse. Eventually, we're going to be looking at implementation needs for IPR as well, and even continuing to remove barriers for non-potable reuse as well. So this is something that will continue to be a focus for us in 2025. And then identifying legislative priorities. We met with our legislative regulatory committee also in November. It's quite a busy month for us. And we met to discuss what are some of the major roadblocks for implementing non-potable reuse, and how can we clarify the language in Title 22. So we are going to be introducing legislation soon. We believe sometime, we're hoping for late December, early January. And once we find an author, we'll be able to move that forward. But some of these items I think will be really beneficial to our community as a whole. And the one that I'll point to is around the notice of violations. When, for example, you might have a pipe break in your service area, that is, you will get a notice of violation that's considered a sewage spill. It's recycled water. So we're hoping to just add some clarity and definitions for recycled water so that we can hopefully improve the perceptions of recycled water, but also just make it easier for our members to implement. And we see this also going beyond California. Many other states have similar language around this particular item. So it's something that we hope to share if we are successful in getting this legislation passed. And then I also mentioned conference planning. And so again, well on our way. It's been a very busy quarter for us with all of these things. And I did mention strategic planning. You know, it was brought to my attention that this organization is a little bit at an inflection point in terms of where our focus has been in the past, with a lot of the emphasis being on getting direct potable reuse regulations, and where do we go from here? And so I like to show this image here of the tennis balls because, we've been asking the questions here about, how can we deliver value to our members? What's most important? And we want to make sure we're getting it right with our priorities, making sure they line up with yours. So we can do more, but it might lose its intended purpose. So we want to make sure we're making the most of all of our resources and delivering what you all need us to do to make your lives easier at your respective agencies and organizations. So we've done this strategic plan through a very collaborative effort, starting with some surveys. We did listening sessions at our conference that were actually in person. And then we've been working with a steering committee comprised of the WateReuse California Board of Trustees. We've had a subsection of them participating in the development of this plan for the last few months. So they've all really dedicated many, many hours to the development of this plan. And I'm really excited that we're making progress on this plan. So you'll start to see some more information from us as an organization once our board approves and adopts this next strategic plan that will be for 3 years from 2025 to 2027. And once our board approves and adopts this, then we'll start communicating it out to our members and setting up some tactics and some quantifiable measures so that we can demonstrate progress on this plan, something we're really excited about as an organization. And this is something maybe some of you have seen before as well. I've taken a stab at trying to capture everything our organization does on one slide, and it's a busy slide. But I will mention, again, with strategic planning, we're about 90% of the way done with that. And our advocacy efforts for funding, this is where we were able to successfully get about $73.5 million for the general fund. And then Prop 4, as you all know, was approved by voters. So this is just shy of $460 million that will be available for recycled water projects. And this will be allocated through the Recycled Water Funding Program. We are actively engaging with the Department of Financial Assistance on how those dollars will be allocated. This will be a collaborative effort on their part and ours. So we're seeking to ensure that the most number of projects can get funded with the $386.25 million. And then I'll just mention again, I know our newsletters are continuing to be successful. We have a fairly decent average open rate. Some of my communications friends are always impressed that we have that high of an open rate. So it's something we want to continue to improve on as well by adding important news stories. So again, if you ever have anything you'd like us to share on behalf of your agency or organization, or updates on a big project, for example, this would be the perfect place. So you can always feel free to reach out to staff and we can make sure to get it in our newsletter. And then I'm briefly just going to highlight very high level some of the legislative and regulatory updates that we've been working on as an organization. I'm always happy to take any questions on any of these topics. There's a lot more detail behind it, but I thought it would be better with this group to just give a high level overview and a summary. So we now have our direct potable reuse regulations. Those went into effect on October 1st of this year. We have making conservation a California way of life. Those regulations will go into effect January 1, 2025. And there are a number of reuse provisions within those regulations. So it's not specific to recycled water, but there is a bonus incentive for direct potable reuse, and also specific provisions to watering and the evapotranspiration rate in there as well. So that's something that we contributed to throughout the development of that regulation. It took about 1.5 years, close to 2 years for that effort from start to finish. And if you ever have any questions on that, we did have a webinar several months ago, but it was recorded and we'd be happy to share that information. Next is the volumetric annual report. This is a requirement that the state asks for each year, starting in January, and they will close out the ask in April. And this is where each agency is required to quantify the amount of recycled water treated in their system. They recently did an update in November, noting that in 2023, there was actually less recycled water utilized. And this was really cited as a result of a wet weather year, and several of the atmospheric river storm events did significantly reduce the demand for really the first time that we can see in terms of recycled water demand. So we could anticipate more variability in the future as climate change continues to impact our service areas. The next one is the recycled water permitting fees. This is something that will go into effect next year. This was as a result of a budget change proposal in the 2023-24 fiscal year. And this is additional funds for our permittees that are applying for a recycled water permit. We worked very collaboratively with a large group of stakeholders to ensure that there were no duplicative fees and that the fees were based off of the size of the project and not a one-size-fits-all fee. And so we went through many iterations, and I believe we found a good compromise with that effort. The next one, as I mentioned, is Proposition 4. That's that $386.25 million that is allocated now for recycled water projects. This will take quite some time for the Department of Financial Assistance to work through how it gets allocated because of some of the language that is within that bond, and some of it has to do with the definitions of disadvantaged communities. So within the bond, 40% of that $386.25 million will be going towards disadvantaged communities. It really depends how those are defined. And that will help us to understand how the allocation could work. So we will be working on over the next several months on a proposed plan to the DFA so that we can best advocate on behalf of our members and ensure that the most amount of funding is available. And then lastly is the Clean Water SRF program. We've been partnering with CASA on this specific effort, and this is around some of the policy amendments. This is something that we're hoping to continue to make progress on and hoping to improve some of the scoring criteria and hopefully help with some of the funding agreement issues that we've noted. It can take a long time to get these funding agreements through both through your agencies and through the state. So we're working on trying to see if we can get some agreement on a potential path forward for a new funding agreement. These conversations are ongoing and will continue to take time. So with that, I will pause here and see if there are any questions. I have a number of slides that go into each one of these that I will make sure that you all get in case you want to read more. I just wanted to make the most of our time together since I only had 10 minutes. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Brinley. Let's see. You can raise your hand or put them in the Q&A box again, or even in chat. I'm monitoring both.
Sorry, you had to suffer through that twice.
No, it's all good. Don't worry about me. Well, thank you. I'm not seeing any questions, but everyone feel free to reach out if you do have questions. And thanks, Brinley, for coming.
Thank you for having me. I always love to see all of you. Thank you.
So next on our agenda is Lakeisha Bryant from Valley Water, and DPR meets King Bach.
Yeah, thank you, Becca. So let me share my screen. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your PowerPoint.
Okay, awesome. So we're going to switch gears just a little bit. This will be very brief, I promise. So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Keisha Bryant, and I'm a public information representative with Valley Water, and I work in the Office of Civic Engagement, and my role involves public outreach and tours of our Silicon Valley Advanced Water Purification Center, which is actually located in San Jose, California. And I have a short presentation on King Bach's introduction to water reuse, and we'll talk a little bit more about who he is. Okay, so first I thought it would be good to start off with a little timeline of the series of events. So we are approaching the anniversary of the release of the DPR regs, and at this time last year, our agency, along with many others, were at the forefront of responding to lots of media requests from different news outlets. So our water supply assistant director and myself participated in a few interviews about our plans to construct a new potable reuse facility for local news outlets in the area. And on December 13th, the Associated Press approached us to do an interview and a tour of our current demonstration facility. And at that time, we didn't know that the interview would make national news, and eventually some of the footage used in that interview and a few others would be taken and used by other news media outlets. So shortly afterward, media outlets across the state and county picked up the story, and everyone during this time was talking about California's new regulations and toilet to tap. So within a week, not only did our story, along with many other agencies and Jennifer West quotes, made it to the Washington Post, and it caught the attention of many popular social media handles, local ethnic media handles, underground media like Hood Beast and Hood Vine and countless others. And we learned so much during the release of the DPR regs when we were doing our media interviews and making sure that we had a designated area for the media to film and nice backdrops. And then we also learned a lot about social media during that time. So social media influencers, they respond very fast to current news. And this person in particular, King Bach, made the video about water reuse the next day after the regs were released. And our video, so our agency actually responded to that video, and we could have made it a little bit more successful, but we work in government, so it moved a little slower than we would have liked. So although the DPR regs made it to prominent news like the Washington Post, nothing was compared to the outpour of views and comments from social media influencer and comedian King Bach. So King Bach has over 26 million followers on social media. He is an actor, he is a comedian. And on December 19th, 2023, my team and I showed up to work, and my colleague Brandon informed me that I was trending on social media. And the night prior, my colleague did a social media search on the DPR regs and found Orange County staff and me on a viral video making fun of purified water. And I was so shocked that one, he picked water reuse as the topic to make a skit about, and two, so many people viewed and commented on the video. So I'm actually going to play the video, and I am going to just throw out a disclaimer that there is profanity and it may be a little cringy. So give me 1 second. Okay, so Rebecca, let me know if you can hear.
Be drinking sewage water? Instead,
We're
they're gonna
good.
try and take the sewage water and try and put a filter on that thing and make it drinkable. I don't care how many filters you put on it, I ain't drinking shit.
96 million gallons a day of treated wastewater from a county sanitation plant. And yes, that includes sewage.
You think I'm going to drink that water?
Yes, you will.
If you drink that, you a nasty bitch.
All right, I'm going to do it.
All that was left was to try it.
She just drank shit with a smile on her face. If I'm her husband, I want a divorce. You went to work today and drank shit? California water officials on Tuesday approved standards to clean sewage water well enough to pipe directly back into drinking faucets, you nasty bitch. The rules, like, gonna tell us? I ain't getting no notification on my phone, no nothing. One day I was just gonna wake up and start drinking shit. Y'all be sending out Amber alerts. I need a shit alert. I need an alert that say, hey, by the way, this morning when you drink your water, it's gonna be a little funny.
Goes through 3 stages. So microfiltration,
What's the stage?
reverse.
Stage 1, you shit it out. Stage 2, flush it down the toilet. Stage 3, you drink your own shit.
And water is just too valuable to only use once. So
Says
I
who?
would
This just ruined my day. All right, what y'all think about this? I'm gonna go take a shit. I'm gonna be drinking
Share my screen again. Okay. So that video had 5.7 million views, over 7,000 comments, 238,000 likes, and 80,000 shares. So the power of social media. Okay, so after finding out about the video and quickly panicking, my team went into PR mode and started to think, how can we actually turn this moment into a positive teaching opportunity? So we went in back to our purification center and we started brainstorming ways in which we could make a slightly funny but short and educational comeback video on social media. So in order to do that, we had to inform our communications team, our deputy, our chief, our CEO. And after letting everyone know what was going on, the consensus was we need to do something. And that something was to create a video. So we spent nearly the whole day cutting and editing the video. We can also consulted with Mark Milan. And about 2 days later, we posted the video with the caption, "Hey, King Bach, we know our ish," but it actually was a poop emoji. "And we have a private tour waiting for you, and we'll make you a believer of purified water." So I'm actually going to go ahead and share that video with you all.
Sewage water and try and put a filter on that thing and make it drinkable.
Have you ever found yourself in a viral video? And water is just too valuable to only use once. Hooray! So you want to waste water? We need this.
Stage 1, you Stage 2, flush it down the toilet. Stage 3, you drink your Were they even gonna tell us? I ain't getting no notification on my phone, no nothing.
Okay, very short video. Talk a little bit more about that. Give me a second. So shortly after we posted the video, King Bach actually replied to the video, commenting on our Valley Water social media page, and then he reposted the video to his Instagram stories. So our response video had over 50,000 views, 94 reshares, 278 likes. Not exactly viral, but I think we did a pretty good job. But I would just say, lessons learned from that time for any social media. We learn to respond as quickly as possible, have fun, be creative, be concise, and scout, social media for anything that could be related to water reuse or whatever topic that your agency is currently doing. Keep it light. We were first like, oh my gosh, how could he say something like that? But then we were like, okay, he's a comedian, so we need to be, very, very light and very funny with whatever we say back, and to make sure that we're following trends. So that actually wraps up my short presentation, looking back on the DPR regs and keep King Bach and that social media frenzy during that time. And hopefully we will continue to make more viral videos and do more with water reuse on social media.
That was awesome. Great response. Thanks for sharing with us. Does anyone have a quick question? I know we're running short on time.
I'll just
Oh,
add that it was remarkable, the timing, how quickly she was able to do that internally, even though I'm sure she felt like was a long time. And I also want to acknowledge that Gina helped us and Mike in real time during those few days. It was very panicky at WateReuse, but this was a shining star that came out of it.
it was cool. We had one question, assuming he didn't take you up on a tour.
Unfortunately, he did not. I would have been kind of cool if he did. But yeah, we did invite him for a tour and he didn't. But at least he acknowledged us. He thought it was hilarious and he thought the whole thing was funny. So
That's
that
awesome.
was a win.
Yay. Great example of how you can respond to the negative and turn it into a positive. Yeah. Awesome job. Thank you for joining us today. Okay, Jen, you're up with news media. I can share my screen real quick that has the link to this awesome document.
Thank you, Becca. So I think good afternoon, everyone. Great to be here. I think in the interest of time, I'm just going to put the link to, oh, that link's really long. Okay, sorry, hold on. I'm going to have to find a different link to share with you all to the media update. Big thank you to the team at Orange County Water District for pulling this together. There's 16 pieces that are highlighted from June to December of this year, all of them much tamer than what Keisha just presented on. But the good news is most were positive or neutral, and included 12 online pieces, 2 print pieces, 1 radio, and one TV post. So please feel free to click through to the link and see the stories of your choice. All right, thanks.
Thank you. And we'll make sure to put the link in the follow-up email as well. All right, Betsy, really quick for a roundtable and see if anyone has something they want to share or ask.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Anyone have anything you want to bring up? Raise your hand and you shall be unmuted. Kristen.
You should be able to unmute yourself now, Kristen.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. I'm Kristen Yasukawa, and I work at Valley Water with Keisha, who you just heard from, and Brandon. And we are located in San Jose. It's part of the Northern Bay Area. And we're interested in maybe gathering a group of folks who are local to the Bay Area and pursuing any sort of IPR or DPR project to see if there's any opportunities to collaborate on more local regional messaging. I know we really appreciate this group for all the collective industry-wide knowledge, and I know it's like throughout California, but we're thinking, maybe we could start some discussions on a more local level and doing some maybe even cost sharing of any outreach or, campaigns or anything like that. So I would say if you're interested and or located in the San Francisco Bay Area and might be interested in joining some sort of discussion, I think we're going to try to schedule something in January after the holidays and just kind of get a pulse of where we all are. And maybe could we utilize a listserv from this group to send out an invitation? Would that be appropriate?
Yeah, in our follow-up email from these meetings, we usually include the PowerPoint, a link to this video, and then all those links that our presenters shared. So if you have more details of who they should contact if they're interested, you can send that to me, Kristen.
Okay, yeah, that would be great. We are working with Mark to coordinate this, so either of us would be great.
Awesome. There's
All right,
Mark.
and that's it. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anybody else? I know we're at time.
Mark, you're muted.
I was just going to say to Betsy that if you're interested in that, I'd be happy to help you and whoever else in the North Bay area.
Rock on. Let's
assist
do it.
them.
Let's do it.
Awesome.
Okay, I'm looking at chats. What's going on? Okay. I think that is it. So, but I want, before we say, I let us all go to lunch, I just want to say thank you for an awesome year. And Gina, are you still on? Yes. Okay, good. And I'm officially handing you the baton for next year.
Thank you, Becca. Thank you for your awesome leadership these past 2 years. And we are a collaborative group, so I look forward to working with all of you.
Yeah.
Likewise.
Awesome. Well,
Thank
I
you,
hope-
Becca, for your leadership.
Welcome. Welcome. Excited to keep on and working with Gina. And I hope everyone has a great holiday season and a happy new year. And in the next week or so, I'll get that follow-up email once I download the webinar and edit it out. And I'll send that all out to everybody within the next week. And then look for early January for, I think, our schedule for next year. All right.
Thanks, Becca.
Well, have a great rest of your day.
Happy holidays.
Thanks, everyone.
Happy holidays. Bye.